Hi guys, I'm Ashley from Whitehorn Woods by National Homes, and I just want to thank you for joining me on this Zoom meeting. Reza and Sophia from RBC, who are our bank reps at Whitehorn Woods. So we are just going to ask you guys some questions that we've been getting from our buyers, if you don't mind. First question I'd like to touch on is, in today's market, what advice would you give a home buyer today in these days of rising rates?
Thank you. Thank you for having us on this call. Appreciate it, Ashley. Thank you, National Homes. We're in some interesting times. We're in times that things have changed a little bit. I think what it's really important is a few things. Number one is let's look back 50, 60, 70, even 100 years. Houses have continued to go up. If you look back from that period of time to today, your house, absolutely, if you had it for that period of time and you look at your house 70, 80 years later, you've made money and you've done well in your principal or your investment needs there. But I think the most important thing is when I sit back and I think of myself as an individual who purchases or my residence, I want to make sure, I'm comfortable. And what's that? Being comfortable is going in and knowing, how much you're approved for, understanding what is it in a mortgage that I require for my new property. Have I spoken to my mortgage specialist? Have I spoken to my financial advisor, my account manager, or your financial planner? Understanding what my budgeting is, how comfortable I feel with that, and ensuring that while you go through this process of buying this beautiful property with National Homes, that the bank is there with you, wrapping their arms around you and walking you through the process.
Good answers, because we do have a lot of buyers who are nervous. Definitely, this would help them put their minds at ease. Another question would be, how much down payments would a home need?
That's a very good and a very common question that we get. And so my answer is it all depends on each client's situation, because what we need to find out is what are their financial plans, what is their financial comfort zone, and all of that will determine and what they can qualify for, and that will determine how much of a down payment they need to come up with.
Probably the best step would be for home buyers to contact you guys to go through their individual scenarios. Absolutely. And gauge it like a personal product. Absolutely. Would you recommend a variable or fixed mortgage in this current market?
So we definitely encourage our clients to review their risk aversion. When you're choosing a fixed rate or a variable rate, there's differences there. A fixed rate will give you a fixed mortgage amount guaranteed for the term that you choose. On the other hand, sometimes at the time that you're taking the mortgage or choosing your term, you might find that the variable rate might look more attractive, but it does fluctuate. And really at the end of that day, it really depends on where that client's risk aversion is, whether they're comfortable with rates fluctuating. And if they're actually okay with that, then they can definitely choose, for example, possibly a variable rate and ride it out from there.
Another question would be, with so much product out there and so many options, what benefits would there be to go to RBC versus another bank or institution?
It's a great, and thank you for asking that question. I think it's key. I think it's key there of this question, because it brings up a lot of things. Number one is when you're looking for a mortgage, especially when you're in the pre-construction market, what happens is there's a period of time from when you actually purchase the property to closing. That could range from 30 days to sometimes, I've seen projects out there 5 years. And I think the key there is security and comfort. And you'll hear me echo that word a number of times today. That comfort is the key. And having that comfort makes me feel comfortable when I'm purchasing. So the key with RBC is something called our firm approvals. What does that mean? That basically means when you do that mortgage and we approve you up front, you are guaranteed the entire time to closing. Again, great conversations you'll have with your mortgage specialist, and I advise you all to go into your local branch or contact us. We'll be more than happy to direct you into a specialist and give you more information about that. But we guarantee you can basically guarantee the rate, you can guarantee your appraisal, you can guarantee everything up front because the entire process is done up front. Now, I know a lot of people sitting back listening to this and might say, wait a second, so how is that possible? It is. And that's what really distinguishes us from everybody else. We guarantee you that approval today to the day you close. You can actually see your lawyer at statement of adjustments and close your mortgage. That's how great it is, up to 5 years out, some of our long-term caps. So that's a big difference between us and a lot of our competition. And that's what makes me feel comfortable knowing that I'm approved. I can close my eyes. If something happens to me, I can close my eyes and feel comfortable. And I think Sophia might add a couple of great points here as well.
Yes. The additional thing that we do have at RBC is based on qualification. We have what we call a home protector. So you can actually get disability in life or life insurance only or critical. And God forbid something ever happens from now until closing, you don't have to worry because on closing, there is a complimentary protection for you up to your closing date. So God forbid something happens and one of the critical illness components comes in, right? It will pay down part of the mortgage to reduce it so that on closing, you would have a much smaller mortgage to close. And that really does make a difference. It gives that client a peace of mind. So it's the peace of mind on having some protection for them. It gives them, with respect to their finances, it gives them peace of mind knowing that they have a mortgage approval guaranteed until closing. It gives them the peace of mind knowing that the appraisal isn't a concern because it's been appraised today and it's guaranteed until closing as well. So that if markets fluctuate, they're still guaranteed on the time that they applied what that value of that house is, right, for the closing. So they don't have to worry if there is a fluctuation, what do we do at that point in time? And last of all, it does give them the guarantee with respect to the rates itself. So depending on the term that we're looking for, it might be the premium or the discount on a variable rate, or it might be a fixed rate that is guaranteed. And that fixed rate guarantee is not to say that that is their final rate. It's just to say that's the maximum they're going to be at. And in a rising rate environment, that's very important to have.
Well, yeah, I think that actually circles back to the first question too. Like, what advice would you give? That's the most important thing to me, is to have that security from now until closing, especially when you're purchasing pre-construction, right? So that's a very important fact. Should purchasers interview a couple of different lenders? I guess not after hearing all these answers, but would you recommend that?
I think I'll take that on to begin with. I'll be as candid as I can. I absolutely think that you should speak to your own financial institution, but I absolutely think that you should speak to other financial institutions because you really don't know what you don't know until you ask the questions. And I think it's a broader question that you need to ask and understand what each bank has to offer. Like Sophia and I just alluded to earlier, understanding that you've got that complementary insurance, understanding that you've got that firm approval behind you, understanding that we're not going to requalify you, understanding that you've got a firm approval with your rates, you know, if it's a fixed rate, feeling that comfort is important to understand. There might be some banks that might have a guaranteed rate, but they need to requalify you. They might only approve you for 1 year or maybe only 2 years, but not the entire 3 years that you require. And then what might happen is you might change your job, something in your life might change, which might cause an issue for your approval if they have to requalify you. So I think it's key that you go into the different banks, the different key banks out there, and have that discussion, understand what they have to offer, especially as we alluded earlier with raising interest rates.
So I actually have some questions as it pertains to the sales, which will help us also. How far in advance should a purchaser contact you if they are thinking about purchasing with us at Whitehorn Woods?
as soon as they've determined that they're interested in and contemplating whether it's something that they want to get into, that's when they approach RBC or the mortgage specialists or our experts. The reason being is that this will allow them to be able to know financially what their range is when they're looking. And so they won't have to worry about, okay, well, I went out and looked and I didn't realize that I could actually have considered this instead. And I thought I was only capped at this. So knowing the budget is so important because it gives you the variety and the range as to what you could be looking for that is comfortable to you. And that range is not just about qualifying, it's what's comfortable to you. Right? So sometimes you might be able to be qualified for this much, but the client may say, well, that's not comfortable because I have to take care of my aging parents. I have other expenses that I am responsible for. And so yes, on the books, it might look like it's really comfortable, but I prefer not to. So there is that range and that variety. And so it's important to find that comfort zone.
So in terms of turnaround time, like let's say someone's contacting us or interested in one of our beautiful townhomes and they contact you, how long would it take to know what their comfort level is and to get pre-approved, for example?
So the preliminary pre-approval could be just within half an hour. All right. So once they speak to a mortgage specialist, they can get an overall, depending on the timeline that they have. If they're available to chat and go through the numbers and get an idea, then they will be able to give a preliminary pre-approval. But the actual pre-approval means for Royal Bank, when we do an actual pre-approval, we go with documentation sent to us so that we verified that this is how the bank will look at this number and that these numbers, a lot of times clients may actually underestimate what they actually can use on the income. So they've sat there and said, okay, I thought I can only use that, but they didn't realize that we would take into account not just the base, but also the bonus and the overtime that they have acquired over the past 2 years average. So those are some of the things that we are able to assist the client with.
Amazing. Okay. And I think Reza did touch on this, but just one of the other questions we get are regarding appraisals. So could you provide like a little bit more information on that? If someone has bought a home and it doesn't close for 1.5 years, what would you have to tell them about appraisals?
It's a great question. I know a lot, it's a question I probably get daily, and the question usually comes at me in different ways. And usually the question I get is, so if I buy today and the price is not the same in the future, and then I need to sell my house to put the down payment and we haven't, what do we do? So with RBC, with our firm approvals, we do the appraisal upfront. So during that firm up period, we are doing that appraisal to give you that firm approval. So it's actually done upfront. You don't have to worry about that at the end. And I think to your question earlier, kind of ties in around asking, the different institutions, what do you have to offer? Because for me, and as I alluded to earlier, it's that whole comfort, wrapping my arms, the bank wrapping their arms around me and understanding the end-to-end process. If I know my appraisal is done upfront, and if anything happens, I feel a lot more comfortable knowing that my appraisal value at maybe 3 months to closing is not the same, and I've got to put money out of my pocket, which I didn't put into my calculation. Again, having that conversation with your RBC mortgage specialist or financial advisor will give you that comfort, knowing that we do that appraisal upfront and we guarantee that value all the way to your closing. All you basically have to do is see your lawyer and sign the documents.
Perfect. This has been very helpful, guys. You've answered a lot of our questions, and hopefully this makes a lot of our purchasers more at ease when purchasing a house. And yeah, thank you very much for your time, Reza and Sophia. And I believe your contact information is on our virtual sales office under mortgage approvals. So anyone interested just has to click and your information comes up.
Great.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.